It's a bird, isn't it?
The 9 Years Podcast.
All right, welcome to episode 66 of the 9 Years Podcast. 66 just conjures up one image in my mind. I'm sure it does the same for you, Stu.
Yes, the year that we won the World Cup.
Indeed. I should clarify, of course, that I am Nick Draper, joined by Stuart Deakins as I am every single week. And thank you very much for listening. If you are listening via iTunes, YouTube, or 9YRSpodcast.org, we are the number one, the nation's, the world's leading number one AFC Wimbledon audio fanzine. Number one AFC Wimbledon podcast. The podcast that by the end of it will leave you feeling more dazed and confused than Shane McMahon having taken a spear from Roman Reigns. A little bit of a wrestling joke there for the wrestling fans amongst you. On that note, Stu, we've got a big announcement to make on this week's show.
Have we?
Well, I have.
Okay.
WrestleMania, I can now officially confirm that in April, or the end of March, beginning of April, I shall be attending the granddaddy of them all. The biggest event in, not just sports entertainment, just in entertainment, in life, possibly. Slightly bigger than, like, the PDC World Darts Championship. But yes, we're off to Orlando for WrestleMania. Happy days.
Cool. So I'm guessing, of course, when you go over there, you're going to make sure you go into sort of like Disneyland and Warner Brothers place and stuff like that, I'm sure, of course.
I think our tickets do come with a day pass to either, I'm not sure what it is it Disney World or Orlando Studios?
Yes.
But there's so much wrestling to watch, Stu. There'll be a show on the Friday night, 2 shows on the Friday actually, then Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and Tuesday. So I'm not going to have much time for anything other than wrestling, really.
Well, you just have to not sleep, mate. Just have to do everything you can in Orlando and then get back.
Not sleep. I'm used to that, Stu. My job as a teacher. We don't get much sleep unless we fall asleep on the sofa. Perhaps at 9 o'clock and then miss the result from Millwall the other night. But moving on. Have you got any big events coming up next year? Not really, I don't think.
Nothing major. I've got something that my fiance keeps telling me I've got to attend in sometime in June. I think there's some sort of big event, but I'm going on holiday, so Scotland, I think it's all good next year.
Scotland, England, isn't it? June next year.
Yes.
Yeah, that must be the big one. The big one. Talking of big ones, how about Big Sevens? Have you got top 7 list this week?
I have. So, as we're going to be doing a podcast this week on looking at the price of football, the yearly BBC report, I thought what better than, of course, the biggest thing that I looked at was not how much a season ticket is or how much a programme is. I looked at the price of pies.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
So, my top 7 list is for away catering because I didn't feel that it could be limited to pies only. So, I've done the top 7 favourite away catering offerings. So, shall I start?
No. Yes, come on, let's go. I want to see where Kidderminster appear on this list.
Don't spoil it for everyone. So, in no particular order, it's the Morecambe pie with mushy peas. Secondly, the Bristol Rovers meat and potato pie, freshly produced and locally sourced. The Bradford chicken Balti pie. Of course, you've given it away already. The Kidderminster shepherd's pie. The Walsall hot dog. Very impressed with the Walsall hot dog. Very good for value.
The catering in Poland is very, very good, to be fair.
It is. They've done very well. Bristol Rovers again get on my list. I think they should be mentioned twice because they're that good. The Bristol Rovers locally sourced Cornish pasty.
Hold on. Locally sourced Cornish pasty?
Well, they're close to the border, aren't they? That way they can sort of... Yeah, I think they called it their pasty, the Bristolian pasty.
Okay, all right.
And finally, it wasn't that this pie was nice. It was just... It reminds me of such a comical moment. The Gillingham minced beef and onion pie. Purely for the fact it was so hot, they didn't provide a fork, and the person in front of me managed to get most of it in his jeans. Just brought back a funny memory for me. So there's your 7.
Thank you very much, Stu. Pie, very interesting. It's like it's meant to be because I was teaching my children about pie today.
Of course. Meat and potato?
Yeah, the maths version, not the food version.
Poor blokes, let them get out of it.
Poor blokes? How old? Do you think I'm teaching like guys in their mid-30s?
Well, they're young adults.
Are they?
They get to adults eventually.
Barely out of nappies, Stu, like my brother.
Oh, yeah, Chris never will get out of nappies, to be fair to him.
No, sadly. But there's our first To Be Fair of the week. Well done.
Oh, no.
And we haven't even got out the intro music yet. You want my top 7 list?
Of course, can't wait.
I thought there could only be one thing this week. It is my top 7 species of bird.
Of course.
Top 7 being, we'll start with the grouse, buzzard, swallow, long-tailed tit, falcon, thrush, starling, and woodpecker.
That's a great list. Try not to laugh desperately, but yeah. Would you say there's a bird called a tit?
There are many tits. There is the long-tailed tit, the bearded tit, and the more common Watford tit.
I did try this last, especially when you didn't mention thrush at the end of it. I was like, crikey, what list are you doing here?
And on that note, should we move on?
Boobs is what they want.
This week's show, we are going to look at this year's Price of Football survey. We did this last year, you'll remember, but that was very much focused on League Two. And despite the fact that Stu and I are just having a conversation about the fact we keep checking the League Two table, thinking we're going to find ourselves in there still, despite us being a League One team for however many months now, we are going to now look around our new division, lots of different teams, and see where we find ourselves amongst that list, and also generally look around the price of football as it stands, as there has been some changes and some improvements over the last season up and down the Football League, but of course there's still a long way to go, so we'll be discussing that. We'll look ahead to the weekend's game with Fleetwood Town. Fleetwood Town didn't get a mention on your food list, did they? That was more for the chippy that's sort of outside the ground.
Yeah, they do great. They do great food inside, to be fair, but you're right, I never really got past the chippy. So it's good chippy, that is. But then, actually, that could be another top 7 list of top chippies in places we visited. Of course, Carlisle would be one of the top ones for me on that one.
My favourite chip shop of all time no longer exists. It went out of business many, many years ago. It's on Tolworth Broadway. Called Chan's Chip Shop. It was amazing, but it must have been gone for about 20 years now.
Oh, dear. See, time flies.
Time does fly. It does seem like a long time ago since we played Bury, which we'll be talking about as well as looking back at the Millwall game from the other night. Poleon Go will be making its return again. We might try and squeeze in a celebrity two-word tango. Who knows? We're unscripted again this week, as you've probably already worked out, so we have no idea where the show is going to go. Let's start with the Millwall game. Many, many years ago, Stu, I don't know if you remember this, we visited Millwall, we visited the Den, very early in the season for a League Cup game, which we lost 2-1. Came a few days after we played Torquay away in the league, and I could not get my head round the fact that you travelled down to Torquay, but you did not travel to Millwall. But now we're in the same sort of situation where, well, I should say, in the same situation as you, because we've been to Oldham, or I've been to Oldham, up to Milton Keynes, up to Curzon Ashton, but Millwall, I decided to swerve this year. £26 was a contributing factor, no doubt. There were other reasons, but it seems like Millwall weren't expecting very many fans to turn up, and once again we're hearing troubles from our fans of trying to actually get into the stadium for kickoff. Yeah,
it makes you wonder, doesn't it, sometimes? It's a London derby. It's not as if, I don't know how many miles are apart from Wimbledon and Millwall, but they can't be no more than 10, 15, if that, I would imagine. It seems that they weren't expecting. It's interesting to see whether that is because of their lack of knowledge from either, lack of research, or is it a case that our club in terms of Wimbledon haven't really given them the correct figures of what they were expecting? I'm not too sure. I heard somewhere that we'd sold in the region of 700 beforehand. I'm not too sure how accurate that is. But yes, there were many reports last night of only 2 windows being open at Millwall, and then not exactly being actually that quick to get them through the turnstiles either. So it did result in a few people missing the first couple of minutes, more than the first couple of minutes. It does seem strange. Surely you would be expecting for a London derby, bearing in mind, I'm not too sure we took that League Cup game, but the FA Cup game we took, more than 2,000-3,000, didn't we? Which of course was our first occasion. But you should be expecting in the region of about 1,000 people for a London derby, surely.
I think we ended up with something in that region actually being in the ground, but you're right, Mill seemed woefully underprepared for about 300 fans turning up on the evening, especially when, with all due respect to Mill, they right bang in the centre of London, they must know, with fans trying to travel on Southern Rail and the general rush hour chaos in London, which at the moment is shockingly bad, I must say, they must expect that people are going to be pushing it close to kick-off at these times, and you'd have thought maybe adjusted their arrangements accordingly, but maybe that would have cost them a little bit too much money and they were being sly. Who knows? Whatever happened, I do know some fans that just gave up, by the way. They just walked away. They thought, I'm waiting so long, there's no point in me paying £26 to watch an hour of football. So
26 quid is a lot of money, isn't it? Bearing in mind we're going to do the price of football, and away tickets at Premiership grounds are capped at £30. It does seem 26 does seem a little bit extortionate.
It is a little bit extortionate, but was it worth it for those that did pay the £26? Main talking points seem to be about a seagull and a sending off. Let's start with the sending off. Jonathan Meads, you've seen it back. You feel he's a little bit harshly done by 2 bookings? Second one wasn't perhaps a booking? Perhaps wasn't even a foul. It's
interesting, actually. I look at the first foul he's got booked on, and he probably goes in with studs, but I don't think he actually connects. I don't think he does. I think he's got done for intent. I think that's harsh. The second one, I can actually probably see why he's got booked, because he's put his arm on the shoulder. He's probably Jonathan Meads very rarely gets beaten 1-on-1, but he's got beaten down the byline, and I think he does put his hand on the shoulder. The guy doesn't go down, but I think he gives the referee the option to do that. Neil Hardy was very wasn't critical, because he doesn't really try and give referees that much grief, but he did say he thought it was poor, and did seem a bit card happy, and that probably also is in the situation of Barry Fuller apparently getting a booking for showing disgust at a bad decision from a referee, which is quite comical in itself, but probably done us a favour, because it now means that he finally now takes his 1-match suspension just before we play the FA Cup and a certain game in Buckinghamshire.
Yes, which is coming up all too quickly. On the balance of play, from what you understand, 0-0 seemed fair. It is a good 0-0 draw, by the way. Always good to take a point away at Millwall, a team fancied for promotion. Do you think we were worthy of it?
Yeah, I watched the highlights. 10 minutes, they've done very well again to get 10 minutes worth of highlights. I think most of that was concentrating on the Seagull, who seemed to be playing the left-back position. Maybe realised that Jonathan Meads might need some cover at some point. I chatted to a few people that went, and they said we didn't play very well. Millwall, Neil Harris said they had a lion's share of it, no pun included. But they just didn't have that edge in the attacking third. It's interesting, because if you look back through the stats, Millwall up until we played them on Tuesday, had only failed to score twice in the whole season. So to keep them goalless, and they do tend to score at least 1 goal, shows that even when we're not on form and not playing maybe on all cylinders, that actually we are still very tight at the back and we don't concede. So I think it's great for us, because when you're not playing well, pick up points, and that's what we've done.
Yeah, would that be 3 clean sheets at the last 4? Have I got that correct? If you think Oldham, the 2 Bury games, and Millwall, yeah, that must be right.
Yeah, and a Bury goal on the weekend was just down to a great ball, wasn't it? It just was a ball that you just can't really defend sometimes. So I can live with that. I can live with that situation. We were saying this on Saturday, weren't we? We've gone to a situation where Darius Charles is missing, but we're not missing him. And that's not to say Darius Charles won't walk back in, because we probably will walk straight back into that team at some point. But Robertson is providing a very good relationship now with Paul Robinson. The fullbacks don't really change too much. Of course, they will on the weekend. And James Shea is just looking calm and collected in goal. And on the Dons player, if people have got that, have a listen to Jake Reed's interview, because Jake is very complimentary of him, but does make a very funny comment. He does, our friend Slavo asked the questions, was talking about James Shea and coming back into the team, and Jake Reeves hints that maybe James Shea didn't deal very well with the fact that he had a new baby, and the sleepless nights might have affected his form. He said maybe that was what affected him, but he's back to his ultimate best, and James Shea is playing very, very well at the moment.
Darius Charles has been out for a little while, and we also mentioned on Saturday the fact that the starting lineup on Saturday, if you said at the start of the season we were going into a fixture in which we were going to end up at the end of it in the playoffs in League One, and yet that starting lineup, no Darius Charles, no Danny Bullman, no Lyle Taylor. The spine of that promotion team, that promotion-winning team, all missing.
Yeah, you're right. You did say that, and it does make you think sometimes, doesn't it? But we've just recruited very well. We had when you look at, I'm a big lover of Chris Whelpdale. I think he's got a lot he's got a lot more to offer than what we've seen. Just his record looks that way. Obviously chipped in with a goal against Bury, but when you bring him in, Don Poleon, Dean Parrott, you have to say that the recruitment has just been very good by Neil Ardley, and what he has brought in. He didn't release much in the summer. He obviously just replaced what he released, but he's just so astute in his signings. And to get Robertson from up north, we all thought, a Scottish defender ain't gonna be that great, but he is such a good squad player, and showing at the moment the squad is very good, and that's where I think we're a lot stronger than other teams, because where they're getting injuries, they're not being able to use their squad as well. We have a very strong squad.
Now, here's a question for you on that note then. Who would you say has been Neil Ardley's best acquisition of the summer? So over the summer, of the players that we brought in, who was the best acquisition? If I could give you the choice between Dominic Poleon and Dean Parrott, where would you lean?
I'd probably go Dean Parrott. Pure for the fact that I think that midfield area was where we needed to add that dynamic midfielder to play alongside Reeves. I would go Dean Parrott, and I think he isn't anywhere near the level he can hit. I think he can get better and better. So he's been my find of the season. I think he's been outstanding.
Dominic Poleon, of course, key on Saturday with the defeat of Bury. That mad 3 minutes. It's very rare that you see your team score 3 goals in 2.5 minutes, and we've seen it twice over the course of 3 seasons. Bury collapsed after that first goal. We saw it happen in the FA Cup game, but for it to happen to that degree, 3 goals in 2.5 minutes, after having started fairly all right in both games, if we're being honest, you do worry about them. Although they did show a little bit of mental strength, I suppose, going away to Sheffield United in the week. I think they were down to 9 men in the end, and they lost to an injury time goal. So maybe there are improvements, or maybe they're starting to get a little bit more mental toughness in there. But for us, it was embarrassing, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I did call it. I did say on the podcast that I expected this very similar. I didn't expect 5 goals. Of course, not that optimistic, but I didn't think Bury could change an awful lot, even in changing personnel or formation. I didn't think they could change enough to get away from that, like you say, mental strength, because they just cave in. They're unable to manage a game. It seems that way. So it's interesting, because I heard a similar comment from a team up in Buckinghamshire who were 2-1 up on Tuesday night and ended up losing, and they said a very similar thing, that they just can't manage a game in terms of. It's if you can see the goal or your goal up, it's about how you kill games. You play the extra pass, or you don't play suicidal passes, or you just play basic football. But Bury could see the first goal, and then it's a car crash. The second goal is just a long ball, and they do a 1-on-1, and then Poleon gets through. And the third goal, I watched it back. I was showing some friends at work, because I was saying, have a look at this 3-minute spell, and they didn't want to believe me. But I didn't realise how long the player has on the wide right of midfield to actually spot Don Poleon breaking. He played, I think, if there was a betting abnormality, that must be it, because he can see Don Poleon for ages and still pass the ball. I just think they didn't. If you were a Bury fan, you just wanted them to knock the ball into row Z, to play percentage football for at least 5 minutes after that first goal and just recover. I likened it to it's like a boxing match where, the first, second round was filling each other out, and all of a sudden the third round just got in, and literally they've thrown the towel in. They've just gone to pieces.
Who do you think was key for us in that 5-1? Was it Don Poleon? He won the man of the match, but anyone else particularly catch your eye? I think there was one name, if I'm sorry to answer the question for you, and you've already mentioned him before, but I think Chris Whelpdale flew under the radar a little bit on Saturday.
Yeah, the thing with Chris Whelpdale, if you're expecting a dynamic winger who's going to go from, like a Lyle Taylor who's played sometimes wide of the free, Whelpdale can play that, but he's not probably going to chase as hard as Taylor running channels, but he's able to adapt. He can play centre midfield, he can play centre, he can play up front, he can play wide of the 3, he can play wide of a 4. He's just very adaptable, which is why you probably can see why Neil Ardley's picked him. But he's great in the air, wins his fair share of headers, and just sniffs goals around the box. For his goal, he's in the 6-yard area. For someone who's supposed to be playing wide of the 4. So I really like him, and the key thing for us is for him to stay fit. That's been a problem in his career. I'm hoping Neil Ardley as a person to manage him through the games, manage him through training, and hopefully we'll see him regularly in the team sheet.
Poor performance, I must say, though, from George Frankham. I thought when he scored his second goal on our fifth, could have put it slightly more in the corner. Penalty was a bit fortunate as well.
I had a gentleman next to me, and I don't think he knew what to do when George scored, because I don't think he knew whether to still moan that he didn't do something perfectly, because, we've said it before, it's the George Frankham is Marmite. You either love him or you hate him. But the person next to me, I saw it, I called it, and I said to you, this guy, I think George Frankham made a bad 5-yard pass. 2 minutes later, Jake Reeves done the same thing, and all he got was from, go on, Jake, keep going, you're better than that. And George got absolutely slated. I just think George is just a person that some fans love to hate.
Well, we love him here on the podcast, and he was an option for our man of the match vote for Berry. And let's run through and catch up with all our man of the match votes and 3-word reports. For Berry, then, George Frankham got 16% of the vote, but Dom Poleon was the clear winner with 60% of the vote. Tom Elliott, 10%, Jake Reeves, 14%. Dominic Poleon and Dean Parrott, I asked that question earlier. They seem to be monopolising, along with Tom Elliott, the man of the match awards this season. We'll have to go back and maybe total up how many each has won for an overall view. A little bit of time left at time of recording for our man of the match poll for Millwall last night, but it's pretty much a given. Jake Reeves is on 8%, Paul Robinson is on 25%, Barry Fuller is on 5%, which means a clear winner as it stands, with 104 votes as it stands, the most we've ever had, I believe. 62% has gone to this seagull. Apparently this seagull that just entered the pitch and did not leave for a very, very, very long time, apparently, suggesting that the game wasn't the most entertaining.
And it also suggests that there wasn't much action down left-hand side, because that's on the highlights. I think he definitely was there, and it was he. Is it a he? We don't know what it is. It's a bird, isn't it? They were definitely there. It literally just plonked itself on just to the just level with the penalty area on the left-hand side, and it just stayed there. So did Millwall fail to want to attack that side? I'm not too sure. But also sometimes there was you could see the seagull flying high over to that side. I just don't understand why it didn't move, but maybe it's because there was just a lack of action on that side.
Maybe it was doing the mannequin challenge. Who knows? Maybe Millwall players have an irrational fear of seagulls. However, I must say, Stu, your quote there, that it's a bird, isn't it, has got to be the favourite line in all 66 episodes of the podcast. And I'm sure we'll be hearing that one again. Is it a boy? Is it a girl? Well, it's a bird, isn't it?
Yes, it's a bird. And just while we're going on that, obviously, we are recording on Wednesday night, of course, because we have no choice. We go out on a Thursday. As people, obviously, when they listen to this, will know the score. But at the moment, Wimbledon under-18s are 1-0 up, Nick, against Bristol Rovers. Toby Simic in the 37th minute.
Thank you very much for that update, Stu.
Our FA Cup run is continuing, hopefully.
Hopefully. I'm very sorry. I'm going to struggle to get through this podcast. I'm going to keep recalling that line. Yes, yes, indeed, it was a bird. Hashtag 3-word, Don's 3-word reports. We didn't actually send a shout-out for any this week, but we got loads in anyway, so thank you very, very much. I'm going to pick some favourites across the two games, because there were some very clever ones. The first of which referenced the Bury game. And let's go for Mark Ayers, at Mark Ayers. He went for Bury Sink again, and then sort of realised that he could make that even better and go for Bury Sink Encore. Very good. We were looking at something along the lines of Deja Vu again, or something along those lines, or Deja Vu almost, because 5-0, then 5-1. But thank you very much, Mark Ayers, for that one.
There's loads of things you could use for that. Even like, you could shaken and buried. There's loads of things you could play on words with them.
Shaken and buried.
Yeah. Well, those are shakers, aren't they?
Yeah, but maybe you've gone for what M. Sturgy Boy went for with his at dummy out the pram with his was shaken and stirred.
Oh, yeah.
Not buried and stirred. Or buried and shaken, or shaken and buried, or whatever it was.
We shook them up and then we buried them. There's just boom.
Yeah. Hannah Kitchener, I'm moving on. At Han Kitcher went for 14-4 on aggregate. Quite right. Yes, we absolutely buried them. There you go, Stu, over the course of 4 games this season.
But of course, if Tom Pope was going to tweet in, we weren't that very good, mate, were we?
Apparently not. But what does Tom Pope know, anyway?
Oh, divine intervention, bless him.
Yeah, they needed a lot more than they got, I'm afraid. You mentioned the FA Cup updates from the youth teams. Any other updates from around the club and any other teams, such as the academy, such as the ladies?
Yeah, definitely. So the ladies, the ladies are going through a bit of a dodgy patch, unfortunately. They lost 4-2 at home to Luton Town. Didn't realise they had any ladies in Luton, to be fair. But they lost 4-2 to Luton. So they're on a bit of a... They're still second in the table with 19 points, but they're 5 points off Cambridge now and also played a game more. So they've had a few cup games, but they haven't won since in the league since 2nd of October. So they'll be looking to bounce back. And they're away to Enfield Town on this Sunday, a 2 p.m. kickoff. Under 21s, a little bit difficult with the under 21s because you've got so much going on. We've rumoured to be playing a Premier League Cup game, which I think we managed to get postponed when we played Newport away in the Checker Trade. But I believe that is next Monday, the 5th of November. Not 5th of November, we've gone past 5th of November.
5th of December?
5th of December it would be. What the month follows November? It'll be December. So we've got lots of games. So the way it's going at the moment, I would say check the official site for updates because it's not very clear yet because we've also got to fit in a Checker Trade game against Brighton on the 6th of December. We're rumored to have that. So nothing in the 21s. Under 18s, I went along to the training ground on Saturday, before the Bury game, and they won 3-0. And I must admit they were very good on the Saturday. And probably my goal of season contender from young Anthony Hartigan, who I really hope it's been captured. There was video cameras there, they do.
Oh, sorry, his goal's been captured on film. Sorry, the way you said that, I thought you said Anthony Hartigan, who I hope's been captured.
Yeah, he kept running and running. He scored a classic goal. This is probably a bit. Actually, it's not been. But I really think he would be our next one that we would get on a professional contract.
You have been rating him, raving about him.
The guy he's very quiet. He looks like if you said boo to him, he probably would run away a mile. He doesn't look your typical centre midfield, tough, real sort of gutsy midfielder, but he lets his passing and shooting do the talking. He got a ball from about 50 yards, and he literally had his back to goal, took a touch, knew what was happening already, and loved the goalkeeper from there. It's just an absolute brilliant goal, and I'm sure it would be captured by the videos and would be on the goal of the month for the youth teams. It'll win by a mile. Absolutely brilliant. But they won 3-0, and like I say, he is one of my. I reckon he'll get a contract very, very soon. He's going to be a very good player.
Loan watch players that are currently out on loan. We have 2, I believe.
No, we've got 3 now, mate.
Who's the third?
Yeah, we got George Oakley went to Welling on loan.
So these things pass me by completely.
I know, mate. To be fair, I was just thinking, obviously, So we got 3 on loan at the moment. So we got David Fitzpatrick, who's gone down to Torquay. He played on Tuesday night as he desperately tries to catch up with his notes. Here we are. So he played on Tuesday night. And do you know what? I didn't even capture who he played against. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who it was. Can't remember now. But he had to play 70 minutes on Tuesday, and they won and go up to 16th. I can't remember who they played.
I'll find out for you if you carry on.
Yeah, we'll try and blag that. It was 3-0 because it was, I think we're 2 up in the youth.
Solihull Moors.
That's it, Solihull Moors. Yes, so they go up to 16th. They got a lad on loan from Forest Green who got a hat-trick. For Torquay now moving out of the relegation battle. That's a good loan move for Dave Fitzpatrick because, of course, now rather than playing 21s, now he's playing in proper football where points mean quite a bit. And Torquay are a big club down that way, aren't they? They sort of look here. They've got Tranmere away on Saturday, and then they got a midweek away game at Dagenham and Redbridge. That'd be good. Interesting. I was just looking at that. York occupy one of the relegation places in the conference. How mad is that when you think about, we scored that late goal against them, didn't we, last season to keep ourselves in the playoffs? And they now are looking like going into the Conference North if they don't recover. So, interesting.
Tough times for York, who were knocked out of the FA Cup by Curzon Ashton, of all teams.
Definitely. So, Kingstonians, they won 4-0 away at Harrow Borough, and Tosi Olasanya. I see it close to that. Olasanya. I just call him Tosi. There's obviously a reason for that.
Yeah,
he got a start away at Harrow, played 78 minutes, was brought down for the penalty to make it 2-0. He didn't take it. Obviously, it wasn't a situation like we had last game of the season. They didn't let him take the penalty, but apparently, from what the description is, it was a mazy run, and they just wiped him out in the area. So K's, we're up to 12th now. They're not doing too bad, and they're away to Northley in the FA Trophy on Saturday. And finally, Welling, George Oakley got a start against Hampton and Redbridge. So Hampton and Richmond, of course, to all our familiar listeners.
Hampton and Redbridge, it's fine.
Hampton and Redbridge, who Hampton are doing really well this season in the top half. I think the top 2, top 3. But yeah, they lost 3-1. He played 63 minutes, and then they played Dartford in the, I think it was a Kent County Cup or something on Tuesday night, and they won 5-4 on penalties, and he sucked away the third penalty. So. It's getting game time there. It's a good move for him. Conference South, Welling are down the bottom of that league as well. I think they're second from bottom. So again, it's I like the way we've sent these kids on loan. With George is not a kid anymore, to be fair to him. He's getting old, but I say old, he's in his 20s now. But it's a good move. They're playing proper football and also points that mean something. They're not mid-table teams. They're teams down the bottom, and they're really going to need to fight and show some character. So that's our loan watch.
You gotta listen out for this guy. It's a famous name, but don't flop. Something like Sebastian Coe, celebrity two-word tango.
Stu's going to go first. AFC Wimbledon / Wimbledon FC goalkeepers.
Ray Merry.
Matt Martin.
Glenn Schimmel.
Hans Sagers.
Neil Sullivan.
Shane Gore.
Ross Warner.
Just. Andy Bell.
James Shea.
Ben Wilson.
Luke Garrod.
Kelvin Davis.
Neil Sullivan, Mark II.
Ian Foyer.
Ashley Bays.
John Sullivan. We were doing so well. We were doing so well. I let you off there with Neil Sullivan twice.
He made two appearances. He made 2 individual appearances.
He did indeed.
And if you're going to class Ben Wilson as a goalkeeper, then I'm going to class Luke Garrod as a goalkeeper.
Well, you could have had. I wouldn't have argued with Luke Garrod. He played in goal for FC. So Danny Oakins.
Yes, he did. And to be fair, it was bare at that end.
I was feeling quite nervous as that was going on. I don't know why. I felt the pressure again.
Did you really? You didn't crack this time, though.
I didn't crack this time. And do you know who I had coming up next if we'd have got there?
Who?
Corinne Brooks-Mead.
Oh, that was the Fulham loanee goalkeeper, wasn't it?
Wasn't that the Tunbridge Angels game?
That's really sad that I remember that. And he got substituted on that game as well.
Yeah, we had about 7 goalkeepers.
Oh dear, stop it, Stu. How is it? I can remember stuff going back donkey's years. I can't remember sometimes we played last week. Short-term memory, eh?
Sorry, what was that?
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, moving on. Price of football, our big feature for this week. We're probably running well late again, aren't we?
I think we are.
Oh, well. Price of football survey then. This came out last week, didn't it? Last Wednesday, I think. Last Wednesday evening.
It did, yes.
There were lots of fascinating findings. A lot of the press picked up, and of course, the top end, they were looking at the Premier League, as they would do, to be fair. Now, blimey, I've said it, to be fair. There you go. There's your 9 years podcast bingo ticked off for me this week. You mentioned earlier about the £30 cap now in the Premier League for away tickets. Now, I'm not sure this is actually being adhered to just yet. I think there's a Football Supporters Federation 20s Plenty campaign that's been publicised, and some clubs have adhered to this. I think one club who I refuse to mention, and West Brom, this is in the Premier League, have £20 and £10 away tickets, but Chelsea are still pricing away tickets for adults at £47, Man United £42. I just can't imagine being a Premier League fan. I remember, and I've probably said this on the show last year when we did this, but I remember going to West Ham away, late 90s, the famous 3-0 down, 4-3 up game. And I think it was £26 then, and we were aghast at £26 for a ticket away from home. That's ridiculous. That's ludicrous. I think Aston Villa the same week was something in the region of £17, so nowhere near as bad. But clearly, this is not sustainable for fans of these football clubs. I don't know how many of these top clubs fans are managing to travel to away games and European games when they're being... what could you buy for £47 instead of a ticket for one football match at Chelsea? What could you buy with £47?
Yeah, I couldn't afford to. I remember my mate's QPR friend, I remember him saying that it was 50 odd quid to get a Chelsea one midweek, and he didn't pay it and was gutted because they won 1-0. But even he said he couldn't justify paying 50 quid to watch a game of football. And that's where you have to come sometime. When do you justify it? I think the Premiership, we are probably it's the reason why they say the best league in the world, I think, because it's the best supported league in the world. But you still get 4,000 or 5,000 fans travelling away. Spurs, the Arsenal, all had great support. But I think that's just because there's so many fans of them. If you think about ourselves, we took 1,200 to Millwall the other night. But that's a big chunk of our actual percentage supporters. But if you've got Arsenal fans, they've probably got, I don't know, potentially a massive fan base to go from. So they're still going to pay it. Because there's always going to be someone. So they might not go every week, and I don't think you can afford to go every week unless you're in a well-paid job. But they're still going to fill out. It's not as if the clubs are going to be infected. And you're right, it's dangerous because once you get to these levels, how do you reduce it? And in our league, we're looking at a way. I'm looking here, and we've got Bolton charging 30 quid. 30 quid. So that's the cheapest matchday ticket. But if I'm looking at our league at the moment, the dearest away, Bolton are 30 quid. The dearest away ticket. How can you be charged that? Where do you go from there? You can't reduce it. You can only keep increasing it. It's not, you very rarely see clubs reduce prices, very rarely.
I think there was some statistic here about percentage of clubs that are actually reducing. Again, we're looking at top end, we're looking at Premier League, but there has been some reductions. I think something in the region of 18% of tickets across the Football League, in fact, were reduced from the previous season, and 50% were held. But as you say, the low-end prices, so the cheapest tickets available at different clubs, does still seem to be rising. So the gap seems to be closing. That's interesting. What of ourselves then? If you go onto the BBC website, there's actually a Price of Football 2016 calculator that you can investigate, and you can look at each individual club's things. Now, Stu, I'm going to have to... I'm sorry to hit you where it hurts, but one of the statistics available is the price of a pie.
I know.
And we didn't supply any. Do we not sell any pies at all?
Well, we tried to. I say try because we managed to provide pies, but only one flavour, i.e. steak and kidney. I don't like that. I don't think that's the most popular one either. And they don't look very appetising. Appealing. Appetizing,
and
appetizing. That's the same, same word. Yeah. Starts with the same, minute. It's like anything. And one of the things I do have a big bugbear about a club is catering. I think it's poor when you compare it to other teams in the same. Well, to be fair, I've not been to many League One grounds this year, but when you compare it to League Two, our offering is really poor. And I don't think we treat it as seriously as some other clubs. And I think it was a little bit of a small gesture to try, because I think people did moan that it wasn't a pie offering, but they didn't exactly go for it, really, I don't believe.
Well, looking at potentially more important things for the time being, tickets. And our cheapest ticket is actually 15% below the league average, so below average there, but our most expensive is above. So that indicates we're probably somewhere bang in the middle of the price range. Very difficult to compare, isn't it, when you look at ticket prices, because we're talking a range of different experiences, all-seater stadiums with Bradford Cities and Sheffield Uniteds and Boltons, like you were saying, that can offer perhaps better views, more comfortable seats, whatever it might be, than we can. We're relying somewhat on goodwill, I'd imagine, with a lot of our fans, because, we are keeping up around about with the average with our ticket prices. Season tickets, the same. 8% below the average for the league for our cheapest season ticket and 13% above. But I don't think any of our fans really have any issues with our pricing. We had this conversation last year, of course, because we agreed to increase ticket prices should we be promoted. And that went through without any real concern or any protestations. But realistically, as we've said before, ticket prices are still too high at this level. £26, like we've said, is too high. It's not going to change, though, like you said. It's not
no, it's sometimes interesting, isn't it? Because when you buy a season ticket, you pay a lump sum, and you tend to forget how much it is just to turn up on a day. But when you look at our top price is £29, which is for a halfway, mainly halfway basically the nice part, the main action part of the year.
The centre.
So it's 29 quid.
Yeah.
And would you pay £29 for it? I would, because actually, no matter where you sit on that halfway line, you are literally on top of the action. It's only, 10 rows deep, 15 rows deep, if that. You're not that far away. It's a great seat. And I remember taking Lorraine's brother, Graham, who's obviously come football a couple of times, and he loves the view from the side. It's like, you can't get much closer. He's a Villa fan, and he wouldn't go watch Villa at the moment anyway, but you wouldn't get much of a better seat than that at that price. Cheapest is 17 quid for the Rygas stand. So, yeah, that's okay if you're 6'5". And you get there early.
Would you fit in it if you're 6'5"?
Well,
so low.
Not wide, not width. If you're 6 foot tall, you probably would, but you'd have to get there about 2:00. And yeah. So it depends. It depends. It's interesting you said Bradford, because I just think we all know Bradford have got a massive ground, and of course to fill that ground they've got to do something different to fill it. But I just think this year they've just done an amazing. And they did it last year. It's not as actually a one-off, but £149 for a season ticket, which is just it's just brilliant. They do loads of different things. I was reading through it. They do literally it's £25 blanket fee. So they do £149 for anywhere in the ground, and they also do match day £25 blanket wherever you want to sit. But they also do, if you buy before 5 p.m. the day before match day, you get a £5 reduction. So it's 20 quid. They also do an interesting thing. They do a flexi card for £50 a season, which basically guarantees you your designated seat. But it's like a membership. So it says, right, you can have that seat if you then pay a match ticket fee, but it's £10 for a ticket for each match.
So it's like a membership, but you're a season ticket membership. So a seat in the ground is yours as long as you agree to pay for it and take it, I suppose, a week prior to the game or something like that?
Yeah, and you sit in your seat. Of course, they've got a ground that's too big for them. Well, I say too big for them. I think they're averaging about 17. Yeah,
I'm not too sure it's too big for them at the minute, to be honest.
Just under 18,000. But it just shows you. I looked at it, for £149 a season ticket, if you paid £20, if you got a discount for the 23 league games, it was sitting back 460 quid. So instantly you're saving £311 just by getting a season ticket. It's a no-brainer.
It's economies of scale, though, really, isn't it? Because Bradford can reduce those prices knowing that they've got however many thousands of seats to fill. And the cheaper you sell your tickets, the more likely they are to be taken.
Yep.
But the impact on your attendances means they could be a lot higher. We're very, very restricted. We're not going to have that deal. We're going to sell out our 4,500 pretty much every week, regardless. What we charge.
Yeah. And you're right. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's interesting to think when we move to our new stadium of what can we do to attract fans? Is that something that may appeal to us? We don't know. Bradford obviously have a person backing them as well. So finances for Bradford, I think it's more of a case of not having a stadium that's half filled, because that stadium half filled is a bit eerie. But if you've got 18,000 average in that stadium and you've got a good team playing as they are, that's your that 12th man, isn't it, as such, to push on. But I was interested in just different things you can do. But yeah, you can't argue with ours, because we know the money that comes in on a match day, our match day revenue goes towards our budget. So we could sit here and moan it's too expensive, but we also realise we haven't got a sugar daddy, and we have to basically provide for the club. So we're not going to moan because we're going to pay it, because we understand that. So we're a little bit different in that way.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too much off topic at the moment, but you talk about when we move back to Wimbledon and the new stadium, you'll probably find that ticket prices will, at the start, as we are now, we could probably get away with charging quite a bit, because I imagine that stadium's going to be full most weeks in those first couple of seasons when we're back, and we have that novelty factor of people wanting to be there. And then gradually you'll probably find, if we're not doing tremendously successfully in the Championship or the Premier League even, probably find that after a few seasons, when it starts to drop a little, that's when we might need to look more at more attractive pricing or whatever it might be. The Price of Football survey does tend to focus on what I'd say is traditional parts of, or what have become traditional parts of being a football fan, including football shirts. So it was interesting to note replica kits at £45. That's the highest in League One. So we're not the only club that charges £45, by the way, but no one charges more than that. But we're looking at, like we say, the cost of a pie, the cost of a cup of tea, and the cost of a programme, which was very interesting to me, because it seems to be a blanket £3 in the lower two divisions, with a couple of notable exceptions. I think Carlisle actually adhere to the cost of living changes being up north. They're £2, and Fleetwood do something completely different with a £1 programme, possibly indicating that programmes are, sadly, not selling as much as they used to. Of course, they wouldn't do in today's multimedia age. But there are lots of other things that come with being a football fan that we haven't touched on in this survey. And I know there's one thing that you've been looking at recently, which is away travel and club coaches. Now, Premier League teams, I think this sort of maybe gets lost in the shuffle a lot of times. A lot of Premier League clubs are just subsidising coach travel now. I think if you buy a match ticket for an away game, they will offer you a free coach place as well to travel you to the game. I know Stoke City do this, and I think have done for quite a while. It doesn't factor into these surveys, but it's very, very expensive.
It's
and
the
we've
cost,
been noticing how obviously everything is increasing at the moment. This is the nature of the society we live in, but you've been perhaps investigating ways that we could encourage people to use club travel more and perhaps look at maybe prices even coming down?
Yeah, it's something that's, I suppose, it's one of the things that's close to my heart, because I do use coach travel because, one, it's the cheapest form not this season because I'm not able to because of my wedding, but normal seasons I will go by coach because it's the cheapest form of transport, and it means I could probably get most of the away games in there. And actually, I don't mind it. I find it quite fun in terms of some of the people you can meet on the coaches, and unfortunately some of the people you can meet on the coaches. It isn't always the best. I'm joking. There's no one else really I don't like.
So I'm just sitting back here letting you dig your own grave.
Yeah, I was just thinking, who can I mention? But I thought I better not mention Nick or anyone like that, or Nick Palmer and people like that. Of course, I don't dislike him. But no,
not what you said last night.
I just noticed that it's gradually just increasing, and I know from chatting to Lawrence Lown last season that the reason for that is because the cost is going up that the coaches charge because of sometimes you have to have two drivers because of now legislation coming in about they can't be driving for so long, and fuel and cost and so forth. I get that. But it's all gone up very, very quickly, where we used to have some blanket £20 and £10 for juniors and OAPs, if I remember properly. And it's just one of those things that I've found it's gone up without really any explanation. I've had an explanation because I've spoken to Lawrence, but that's because I know Lawrence and I brought the subject up. But I just think sometimes when I was young, when I was in my early days of sport in Wimbledon, when I was sort of 15, 16, for me to get to a away game, a coach was a great option. I didn't know anybody, so I couldn't go on a train. I didn't really have any groups that I knew, so I went that way. And I just think if you look at our fan base, we have such a young fan base. We have a family-orientated fan base. A coach offering would be good for them. But if you're going to be paying £30 on your own, a family of four, that's 60 quid for the adults. I'm not too sure what the child cost is, but it's not far off that. You're probably looking at about £100 of travel. So me personally, I'd be lovely if we can find ways of reducing that by either membership, even sponsorship. Could we get a sponsor? We are very good with sponsorships. We have everything sponsored really. Could we not look at our away travel and increase that?
We are, and it's my fault, very much in danger of going well off topic here, but we do actually, you're quite right, we do actually have everything sponsored. We have our back of our shorts sponsored. Every stand is sponsored. And
they do a great job, Nick. And it's not me saying that they should be looking at the coach, but I think we are very good. Ivor does an excellent job of sponsorship. I wonder sometimes if it's things like that, because they're not... If you travel by train, you wouldn't notice there's a coach going. You wouldn't, because you wouldn't have any need for it. And I think sometimes it's just left a little bit on its own and forgotten about, but it's a way of increasing our support base and actually encouraging our fans of tomorrow, the kids, to get to away games. And you and I know you can't beat an away game sometimes.
No, you certainly can't. Charlton was great this season, wasn't it?
And Peterborough.
And Peterborough was even better.
And all the other ones I missed. Yeah, I walked into that one. Thank you.
Well done. Is there anything else you noticed from the survey?
You touched upon it, the programme. The Fleetwood thing I looked at was £1. I actually looked a bit further into that. It's quite interesting because their chairman basically said that people weren't interested in seeing loads of sponsors advertising in programmes. It just wasn't really the feedback was really bad, so he decided to change the programme, and they changed it into it was more of a, I don't know what the size of it is now, but it's more of a I don't make myself look stupid here. It's not the first time I've done that, but it's not the old sort of typical program size we had, but more of a rectangle sort of shape. It's more, I don't know how they describe it nowadays, but basically it wasn't as many pages. It had the main information that a fan wanted to know about all the sponsorship rubbish in it, and also you were able to purchase it online as well for £1, and get it sent to you, I think, about 2 or 3 hours before kickoff. So you could have an electronic version as well if you missed a game. I thought it was really good. To go down to £1, it's not their first season they've done that either. I thought it was really good when you rightly said it's a blanket £3. They're not just in our division either. If you go down to the conference, it's £3 for a lot of clubs in there. So that, and I was laughing at the cost of cups of tea. £2.50 for a cup of tea at Coventry.
But that's because it's a Ricoh Arena branded Wonder cup of tea or something. I don't know. The league average is £1.85. £1.85, which doesn't seem too bad.
It's interesting because I was looking also. If anyone has been on the football ground guide on the website, which is a very good read, has reviews and just generally all the information you want to know about away ground. But I did have commentary and said that they're actually bottled water is also £2.50. I just find it unbelievable. A cup of tea is just hot water, which you can get from a tap, and a tea bag, which you can buy in bulk.
You can't get hot water from boiling hot water from a tap.
Okay, it's got to go through a kettle or big kettle. I forgot what the words are.
A kettle or a big kettle? Yes, it does.
They're big industry-based hot water bottles. But yeah,
it's like a bird, isn't it? It's just a bird.
The thing is, for £2.50, I'd want 2 tea bags. If they put one in there, I'd be going, 1 second, mate.
Yeah, but then it'd be
for that price, you would put 2 in, but then it'd be double the price, wouldn't it?
It would be. Do you know what? In Parsons Green, in leafy Parsons Green, I get a cup of tea every day from a little cafe around the corner from the school. It's £1 in Parsons Green.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
how can they charge £2.50?
I know, in Coventry, ridiculous.
But,
ridiculous.
Yeah, apart from that, it was roughly what we thought, wasn't it, really? I'm never going to moan about our prices because, like I say, we said it already. You know what I mean? We offer, we have to pay what we have, but some of the prices are just unbelievable, really.
There are a lot of high prices, and we have got a lot of high price away games coming up, haven't we? Ignoring Curzon Ashton, we're £12 a ticket, which is great, and the club have done a deal with the coaches. Done a very good job there for £10 if you want to travel on a coach for that very, very early kick-off. But Milton Keynes obviously coming up, Bristol Rovers, Southend. They've charged a decent amount in previous seasons that we've been there. So expensive time of year, doesn't it? It affects you more around December time.
Yeah, it does. We're quite lucky in a way because obviously with the Curzon Ashton game, we have to put really a big thank you and credit to Curzon Ashton, and for all of you listening, actually, we're going to have some interviews with some people at the club actually to do for our preview next week. But they haven't put their prices up. They kept it at £12, which I think is really good of them. And also the club, as we talk about subsidised travel, and I suppose is what alluded me to discuss it this week, they've also done for the first 300 people booking on coach, will get a £10 flat fee. So technically, with a match ticket and coach will cost you £22. You wouldn't have got into Millwall for that the other night. So I think
probably sums up the
choice.
Yeah, it sums up everything, doesn't it? In that, when you mention it there, ticket and travel for less than it costs for ticket for a League One game.
Yeah. So you and I are up to Curzon Ashton. You're not on the coach saying that. I'm on the coach at 4:30.
Yeah, saying that I've splurged on a hotel and a train journey.
4:30. Oh, what's going on? Anyone who Lawrence Lown would probably be as bright and breezy at 4:30 in the morning, bless him. I don't think that bloke's ever tired, but 4:30 is going to be a challenge. But I think it's going to be I can't wait for the FA Cup. Yeah, and like I say, we're going to have some interviews with the directors and stuff next week. But yeah, then we go up to Buckinghamshire. I'm still toying personally if I'm going to go to that. I find it very difficult to look at the romance of the FA Cup 1 week and the week after. There's not really much romance, is there?
The complete polar 180 degrees opposite of football romance. But well, we are going to be looking ahead to the week's action next. Let's just touch on that Milton Keynes game because we know they had a horrendous result in the week, again losing at home to bottom of the league Chesterfield.
Horrendous? Is that what you call it? I call it comical and fandabidozy.
For them, it is horrendous. That is a terrible result. I actually don't think it's a great result for us either, because we haven't lost away from home in the league since the opening day, and they haven't won at home in the league since March.
Yeah, 2-0 win against QPR on May the 5th.
So, March 5th.
March the 5th. Yeah, interesting. Our birthday.
Which is our birthday, which is quite a sad.
Yeah, so that was when they beat QPR. They have no other league. They have no other home games before they play us. I think they go away, interestingly, with the news of Scouse person being a manager at Charlton. His first game is at home against Franchise in the FA Cup. They then go away to Yeovil in the Checker Trade, and then they play us. So yeah, they got an interesting run of games. I looked at their goals, actually. I did have a look at their goals, and they look worse than Bury defensively, if I'm being truthful.
I know, but you know what? They're probably going to have a new manager in place finally by the time they play us. Law of averages suggests they due a home win, and we are due an away defeat. It is my worst nightmare that they have not actually won a home game before we've got to go there. In December, by the way. December.
But then flip it around. The chances are that even they do beat us, unless I'm not saying that I'm not saying that I think they will. I don't think they will personally. I think we're going to bash them. But even if they do beat us, they still can't get anywhere near us in the league table. How interesting is that? If we said that at Walsall that we would go to that place with a 10 point buffer, you'd have thought no chance. You're smoking too much.
True. But well, we have got one more league game before that fateful day in Milton Keynes, which is Fleetwood on Saturday. Our record against Fleetwood is good, is it not? I think every time we've played them at home, in fact, we've beaten them.
Yeah, do you know what? I did every stat apart from head to head.
Yeah, forget that one. That's not important.
Yeah, I forgot the head to head. If I'm being truthful, yeah, I think our record is very good, isn't it?
It is very good. We won certainly both League Two encounters, staying up on the last day, and then the following season, one of our better performances in the Football League. We beat them 2-0, and of course in the conference we beat them 1-0 in the league, and then 6-1 and 8-1 in aggregate in the playoff semi-finals. But they're on a good run of form this season, aren't they? I think they won 3-0 on Tuesday night.
Yeah, they did
against Shrewsbury, admittedly.
Who have gone bottom after Chesterfield won at Franchise. So, yeah, I look at their team. I don't see a team that frightens me too much. I think they're a steady Eddie team. I think they're a mid-table team. They're obviously sitting in just behind us, aren't they? And if you look at the form guide, they've won their last two, but over the last six, they've won 3, lost 3. So they're middle of the form guide, and we're sitting 6th at the moment in the form guide for 6 games. So interesting. If you look at statistically for Fleetwood, they've not been lower than 14th all season, and they've, as I say, a steady Eddie team. Their average position is round about 10th. That's where they've been most weeks, give or take a measure, give or take 3 places either side. That's where they've roughly been. So they're a mid-table team in all sense of the word, I think, this year. So I think my sense is we'll get through. We'll beat them. Of course, we go in there without the 2 fullbacks, so we're going to probably bring George Frankham into right back, I reckon, and we'll bring in Owens. What's it? I've forgotten his name now. Owens?
Seth Owens.
That's really bad.
The love child of Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens.
It's really bad. I saw the guy for under 21s earlier in the season. Really liked him. I can't remember his name, but he done a really good job. Didn't he? He did a really good job on Saturday against Bury. Not that he was tested that much, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Barry Footer gets a week off. Very difficult to rest Barry Footer, because I imagine he's probably one of the ones that Milton Keynes finds the most difficult to say to him, have a rest. He doesn't want to rest at his age. And Jonathan Meads, we could have probably rushed him back probably a little bit too early. So not saying that he wasn't fit on Tuesday, but actually another week off just to give him that opportunity to fully recover, and then we can go into the FA Cup game at Curzon, Brighton in the EFL Trophy, and then of course off to Franchise. So I don't think it's a bad thing that we've got them 2 out.
Quick prediction then for Fleetwood.
2-0 to us.
Sounds good to me. Of the other games in League One, we don't really have time to speak about it, but I think there's only one that really stands out, which is Charlton versus Sheffield United. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, after their 5-0 win, Charlton, although to be fair, Kelly Roos had a hand in most of them. Yeah, interesting point. That's for another show. But yeah, it's a good game, isn't it? And Charlton looks to be on form. The new manager, Buzz, I hate this. Personally, I hope it's really sad, actually. I love Charlton as a club, but unfortunately now I want him to fail, and for him to be at the helm. unfortunately.
Yeah, it goes to the owner and the manager now. It all runs through, doesn't it? And I feel sorry for their true supporters.
But the good thing is very quickly, Nick, before I just quickly say, is that we now get the chance to have a hatred game against him in February as a warm-up for when we welcome, well, we don't welcome them because we're never going to welcome them, for when they come to us in March. So we still get to voice our opinion about him.
Our very, very high opinion, of course.
Of course.
Of course. Updates from the Fleetwood game will be available. Twitter at 9YRS Podcast. Facebook, follow us, 9YRS Podcast, and Instagram as well at 9YRS Podcast. And big thank you to George and Paul Raymond and Chris, my brother Christopher Draper. Very active with the updates from both games last week, actually, on Twitter. So thank you very much for that. And of course to your fiancée, Lorraine, for her work on Instagram too. We're going to squeeze Poleon Go very quickly in this week because we are running late again, but once again we are sounding great. So Stu, Don Poleon, he's in the car this week. He's driven up the motorway, he's driven up the M6 all the way to junction 31. Any clues or any ideas whereabouts in the country he might be?
Stoke.
No. So he has parked up, he's walking to the ground, and outside the stadium is a big statue of a club legend, although he's not sure if it's actually a statue like it's advertised, more of a water fountain. It is surrounded by water.
Water? Nottingham Forest.
No, the statue is in actually some form of water bath type thing, so it really is a water fountain. I don't know why they describe it as a statue. But anyway, no, not Nottingham Forest, I'm afraid. You might get it with the final clue. And if you don't, I've got an anagram at the end if you really are stuck.
Even better.
Renovation on the stadium was completed finally in 2008. So it looks like a brand spanking new stadium, but it's actually very, very old, or the plot of land it was first built on is, but it's now completely renovated. Stand by stand, and that was completed in 2008.
Wow. Renovation 2008 M6 water. I ain't got a clue, mate.
The anagram of this stadium is very simply Dead Pele.
Dead Pele? Deepdale.
Hey!
Preston.
Well done. Preston.
I got it on
the anagram clue. Wow. Whatever next?
Well, I don't know. Don't do it again, because I won't get the second one. They got a water fountain as a...
I think it's a Tom Finney statue that's actually a water fountain.
Because he can walk on water. Hey. Sorry. That was really bad. Yeah, do you know what? Preston's an interesting one, because I actually remember going to Preston many, many years ago, and actually they did have a really old main stand, which, you're right, they did replace. I didn't realise they replaced all of them. Yeah,
they've built the stadium up slowly. That old stand that we were in, it almost felt like a cinema the way you walked through into the stands. And of course, that was famously when we went there after relegation from the Premier League. It was our first point after relegation that we picked up, if you remember correctly. I think John Hartson scored for us that day. Famously, where we scored to go 1-0 up with our first goal of the season, that season, just before half-time, literally a minute before half-time. A minute after half-time, Preston equalised, and many, many people missed both goals. Not that we know anyone that would do such a thing like that, Chris.
It's a ground I want to go back to, because Preston have a lot of history, a very old club, and I do want to go back to them because it's new now, but I didn't realise all 4 stands. I learn something every day. Not
sure
really.
That's true. No, I'm not sure that's true at all. Although at least you know that a seagull is in fact a bird.
Yes. Oh, and Wimbledon are 2-2 up now. Car in the FA Youth Cup we must be going through.
What a nice way to finish this week's show. So thank you very much for joining me, Stu.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for listening. A couple of announcements we have to make before we do go. Goal of the month then. Thank you very much, Mark Hendricks, for organising that for us. And the vote on Twitter has ended. And, unsurprisingly, I suppose, Darius Charles has won that for his goal against Oxford back in October. So he's our October Goal of the Month winner. Congratulations to Darius. Also, you don't have very, very long left to vote in the Don's Trust election. It closes on the 28th. That is Monday. So you must get your vote in if you have not already. Some very, very interesting conversations still taking place on the Don's Trust web jam. If you have a look at that, go to www.thedonstrust.org to find the link to the web jam project, and some very, very interesting answers on a Twitter debate or Twitter discussion that occurred the other evening. If you search for the hashtag Don's election, you'll be able to find all the replies and responses to that with all 6 candidates. And thanks to all candidates for taking part. Very enlightening evening. Brings us to the end, as I say, to this week's show. 5-star rating and review on iTunes would be most appreciated, but more than that, your company with us next week, even more appreciated. We'll be joined by Harry Kane to describe, or for him to describe, what life is like as a Champions League club. Never mind. We'll see you then.